friends, I am here once again, Professor Smita Jha, to discuss countering stage fright. Now today's topic is stage fright common? In the previous lecture, I explained in detail the very definition of stage fright, because knowing about how to counter the stage fright, it is very important to know that what is stage fright or fear. And this is a very common word. And in course of discussion, I elaborated that stage fright is a kind of self-obsession regarding one's image. It is a kind of apprehension for the future incident or accident, and it can be called performance anxiety, a kind of phobia, and also a fear that sometimes very irrational to define. The kind of nervousness that occurs during a stage performance is needed to be addressed, and that is why it is very important to know, to define the stage fright. Well, this is a very prominent question. Is stage fright common? Because the fear that develops in oneself may give the impression that it is he or she who is suffering from the disease. And what is the disease? The fear. Though it is not the right kind of thing, because in my opinion it is a common fear, common feeling. Yes, in terms of intensity it differs from person to person. Individual variation is very much there. So let us discuss today, is stage fright common? To strengthen the view that it is not only X or Y who is suffering from this kind of performance anxiety. Well, we all know that, when we speak, it is coming from the brain, and we prepare ourselves for the future event, that is stage performance, and based on the memory storage in our brain, we try to perform well. Sometimes memory is described in terms of 3 stages: encoding, storage, and retrieval. Because how much you retrieve while speaking, that depends on your caliber. During encoding, information to be remembered is analyzed or processed. During storage, information to be remembered is put in a good place in the brain. And during retrieval, stored information is called back, that is recalled, when it is wanted or needed. Wanted or needed means the time when you have to deliver your talk or lecture. So when we say that is stage fright common, this aspect is very important, that what is your caliber to contain the memory or to recall it at the time of performance. See, there is a term problem solving, which refers to the ability to think or reason about things, may involve decision making. Problem solving involves mainly 5 components. Because why is it common, or is it common? This problem solving aspect is very important to know. Identifying the problem. Suppose you are in crisis, how you are identify the problem. Identify all possible solution to the problem. Select the best solution. Solve the problem. Make sure that the solution is worked and adapt as needed. See, this depends on personal caliber. Sometimes in the reality show, we find someone falling down on the stage or committing some kind of mistake. If the artist is matured enough and smart enough, he or she can handle the situation very well without making the audience realize that something happened wrong. So even it depends on a person that how smart he or she is, how manageable he or she is. There is another term that is called executive function. Executive function refers to the ability to plan, initiate, complete, and oversees goal-directed behavior, coordinates attention, memory and problem-solving abilities to function creatively, and how independent you are. So language may be viewed as another cognitive communication process. What is cognitive communication process? Thought process related to your brain with many parts that include auditory comprehension, verbal expression, that is content, speech intelligibility, reading, writing, and social skills. Developmentally, thinking affects language and language affects thinking. Yes, thinking is a very powerful tool, and that is why this stage fear varies from person to person if we talk of thinking process, thought process, or cognitive component. In the last lecture, I described behavioral component also, because the physique of a person is different from one to another, and behavioral component means, among other things, blunt or too expressive presentations, problems with presentation, rhythm, reading error, and other behavioral changes such as irritation, audience, avoidance, alike. So this is person specific, how much he or she involves in the task of this speech expression. Suggestions for managing speaking anxiety typically address its cognitive and behavioral component, while the physical components are left unattended. Because see, physical is though related to your mental problem during the time of stage performance, but it is different from mental problem and also from person to person. As we learned earlier, we can't block these natural and instinctual response. We can, however, engage in physical relaxation exercises to counteract the general physical signs of anxiety caused by cortisol and adrenaline that I discussed in the previous lecture, kind of hormone, kind of release, which include increased heart rate, trembling, flushing, high blood pressure and speech disfluency. So, secretion of hormone like cortisol, it affects an individual entire personality. So, the question is it common to everyone? Maybe yes, but the intensity, that is different. So, a fear of public speaking can make you feel tense, which negatively affect your body language. So, the best public speakers, maintain proper posture, make eye contact with the audience and move in ways that look natural. But it depends the level of confidence a person has at the time of stage performance. Good body language improves your performance and helps the audience take in and remember what you say. So, avoid putting your hands in your pockets or crossing your arms. Instead, start with your arms at your side and use purposeful hand gesture as you make your points. This shows confidence, and this is again individual specific. Look out into the audience. Don't stare down at the ground or at your notes for long periods. I have seen students, they keep on reading the slides and not even able to look at the audience sitting other side. That kind of presentation becomes very mechanical, and we generally say that, well, this is not the right kind of presentation. And that can be possible, this kind of attitude because of fear. So, as you build confidence, you may even start to make eye contact with individual people watching your presentation. And slowly, gradually, this will give you a feeling of confidence. For many people, public speaking can warp their sense of time, making them speak faster than they normally would. Now, this is also very important point, because when we talk of is it common, it is common, but again the rate of differences is very, very high. So beware of this phenomenon and keep a steady pace while presenting. So it will help calm your nerves and allow the audience to better understand what you say. Also, breath control can help you, and you can do this. Practice using your stomach to push in and out to strengthen the lungs. So before you begin public speaking, this is very important to take 10 slow deep breaths. Again, if I ask you or you ask me, is it common to have a stage fright? Or it's me who is the abnormal one who is having this stage fright or performance anxiety? I would say yes. It is common. Approximately 1 in 4 individuals report feeling anxious about having to present their ideas in front of an audience. 1 in 4. See, the ratio is very high. Fortunately, there are many techniques that can help people overcome their fear of public speaking. Millions of people suffer from performance anxiety, commonly called stage fright. And in fact, most people would rather get the kind of infection like a flu than perform. So athletes, musicians, actors, public speakers often get performance anxiety. And performance anxiety can prevent you from doing what you enjoy and can affect your career. I usually advise my student to listen to various talk, lecture, to feel the rhythm of good orators, to know the very mechanics of to give a good talk while on the stage. Maybe not in a one day, but with the passage of time, you may develop the quality, the guts to face the odd situation and to defeat the horror of stage fright. Well, when we talk of this problem, that how many people can be affected with stage fright, the ratio is high, because whether it is a speech at a professional meeting or a wedding party or competing in a sports event, sweaty palms and shaky knees are commonplace when speaking or performing in front of a group of people. In fact, most people experience some form of performance anxiety, even if it's only mild. A lot can be at stake, since a good public showing might advance a career, and for example, yet fear can trip anyone up with an increased heart rate and suddenly blank mind, which is called blackout also. So stage fright can be devastating both professionally and personally, but it is not considered a full-blown phobia. However, an extreme fear of public speaking is a phobia, which I discussed in the previous lecture, which is called glossophobia. And glossophobia is a subset of social phobia, or the fear of social situations where one is being watched or judged by other. See, when you were in school, remember, your teacher was asking you to sing a song or to chant something or to read out a poem. What happened that time? If you can recall it. Didn't you find that some of your friends, they went to the stage, they read out poems so well, or any kind of performance, but at your turn, you have all nervous system alert. See, this realization is very important. And if you ask those who went and performed well, they can also tell you that they have also this kind of feeling. So it is common, yes, higher or lower, but it is always advisable to talk to others, to know the actual situation. When individuals are scared of public speaking, their fear arouses the autonomic nervous system, triggering a fight, flight or freeze reaction. In addition, false beliefs about public speaking and negative thoughts about oneself as a speaker can lead to poor performance. Like situational factors like a new location or different audience can also be detrimental, and the speaker's confidence in their skill level can play a key role how well they perform. Even some of the students, even in class performance, they feel shy, they feel shaky. And I always tell them that all of you sit together and you discuss at this point that where you feel weak, when you feel it is devastating, and with the help of other you counter, because you all are on the same boat. So the National Institute of Mental Health reports that public speaking anxiety or glossophobia affects about 40% of the population. The underlying fear is judgment or negative evaluation by others. So public speaking anxiety is considered a social anxiety disorder. Now, when we move further to know about this problem, we should talk about evolution. Evolution psychologists believe there are primordial roots. This is genetic also, and this also I mentioned in my previous discussion. Our prehistoric ancestors were vulnerable to large animals and harsh elements. Living in a tribe was the basic survival skill. Rejection from the group led to death. Speaking to an audience makes us vulnerable to rejection. So much like our ancestors feared when society was very, very unsafe. See, I am trying to relate with this because we all are human. And the evolution process is very important to make us sensitive towards something that is called fearful. A common fear in public speaking is the brain freeze. The prospect of having an audience's attention while standing in silence feels like judgment and the rejection. So, the prefrontal lobes of our brain short our memories and is sensitive to anxiety. I was just going through an article by Dr. Michael D. Georgia of Case Western University Hospital, who says that if your brain starts to freeze up, you get more stressed, and the stress hormones go even higher. That shuts down the frontal lobe and disconnects it from the rest of the brain. It makes it even harder to retrieve those memories. See the phobia kind of situation. Brain becomes completely frozen, and more it will be frozen, it will be tougher to retrieve the memory we store in our brain. And again, it depends on individual. The fight or flight response activates complex bodily changes to protect us. A threat to our safety requires immediate action. We need to respond without debating whether to jump out of the way of oncoming car while in an intersection. So, speaking to a crowd is not life-threatening. The threat area of the brain can't distinguish between these threats. Yes, brain can give only indication. Certainly, a stage performance is not the question of life and death as people consider it. And the more you make it horrific, the more you will be unable to get the confidence required for a good orator or for a successful public speaker. So again, it depends on the individual that how extrovert you are. The more you have public experience, you have this knack quality to make friendship, to talk to people, the more you will be successful in your life or in a stage performance or in your professional life. See, we want our brains to be alert to danger. We are alert every time. The worry of having a brain freeze increases our anxiety. Ironically, it increases the likelihood of our minds going black, as Dr. D. Georgia described. We need to recognize that the fear of brain freezing is not a life or death threat like a car barreling towards us while in a crosswalk. So, we need to find out, the level of fear, and this is what Dr. Georgia also described. Otherwise, the brain would be frozen. Now, to know about, because I am also an expert of neuro-linguistic programming, I was just going through some of the case studies, and I read out, though I am not mentioning the name here, and how they were explaining their feeling or their emotion related to stage fright. People feel nervous as they know that entire audience is watching them, and if they make a single mistake, it will be remembered forever. Another reason is when you are less prepared and you face crowd which is above your level of intelligence, you tend to feel nervous. So nervousness goes away when you take part on many such activities more often and you know your subject well. See, this is the expression of a student who faced a stage performance with a stage fear, and whatever comes to a mind of that student, it is written here, share. Do enough research. This is by another person who went through the same trauma. Do enough research and practice before you go to the stage, and feel as if you are the only one present here, and also think that even if you make mistake, will those people remember the mistake 5 years down the line? That's what I think every time I go to the stage and face the crowd, and it actually helped me up to a certain extent. It's still long way to go. Another student is saying this, and I like that when you go to deliver the talk, you think that you are boss of that space, and people are not going to remember the mistake, lifelong. It is just momentary. Having to be the focus of attention can produce a lot of anxiety in humans, especially if you are not accustomed to it. This is by the third student. There was a time as a young man when I acted in many plays, played clarinet and sang with a band and in musical, and after a while I no longer had much stage fright. Your focus turns away from thinking about yourself to performing the role or the music. The focus has to be on entertaining the audience. See, this is a very neutral kind of expression, and this is also from the writing of one of the students from the case study. Read the mind, that in most of the students this fear is common, but how did they address this fear? That is important. Mind can be divided into conscious mind and unconscious mind. Conscious mind works on logic, analysis and takes decision. So when we sleep, our conscious also goes to sleep. Unconscious mind stores information and emotions. However, emotions are felt at conscious level. Unconscious is working 24/7, but its power is not felt when conscious is awake. Unconscious is creative and imaginative. He is like a fertile soil. He doesn't argue and accept the idea as it is. Dreams come from our unconscious mind. So mind and brain, mind is abstract, while brain is the biological phenomenon. So unconscious is lot more powerful and resourceful compared to conscious. Conscious is like passenger sitting in the car, that is the life. And unconscious is like a driver who has all the resources like brake, accelerator, navigation system to drive the car. So the two function going on and on. And this also play a vital role while giving talk on the stage. So student, here I would like to stop, because I have given some case studies also to strengthen the argument that stage fright is common. Yes, ratio is high, but how to address this, that is individual specific. And with this, I must say thank you very much and have a nice day ahead. Thank you.